For the people of Bayou Corn, a small community in northern Assumption Parish, the first signs of trouble appeared in late May. Streams of bubbles appeared in the water in nearby Bayou Lafourche.
Then in early August, a series of tremors led to the discovery of a sinkhole.
Since then, that hole in the ground has continued to grow, along with the concerns of local residents and the officials they're looking to for answers.
Tonight, Chuck Huebner begins a three-part series of reports on this history-making event. Here's Chuck with part one of the history of the Assumption Parish sinkhole.
I've seen a lot of crazy things in my 12, 13 years in law enforcement, but this is definitely a first.
Crazy. What else is there to call it when part of your parish is steadily disappearing into a hole in the earth? Scientists call them sinkholes, a geological event that occurs when soil or rock formation, sometimes hundreds of feet beneath the surface, suddenly gives way and creates a depression or hole. But Assumption Parish Sheriff Mike Waguespack describes it differently.
It's almost like a live animal. Every day it tends to grow and there's a different issue that develops.
For Sheriff Waguespack, the most immediate issue has been the mandatory and continuing evacuation of some 150 families who live within 2,000 to 3,000 feet of the sinkhole and have still not been able to go back home. Dennis Landry is one of those homeowners.
Nobody ever expected anything like this to happen.
Landry is also a local businessman who relies on this area for a living.
Yes, I have a boat landing, I have some RV spots, and I have some Cajun cabins, and it's kind of got my business upside down. I'm still rented to a certain extent, but I'm renting to the state agencies that are responding to the emergency. So I'm just hoping once this is all over, my customer base returns.
The problem is no one knows when that will be. John Boudreau, the Director of Homeland Security for Assumption Parish, says the experts are telling him this sinkhole is new science.
It's going to take the information to be collected and interpreted, and then we'll move from there and see if it is where the risk lies then.
Of course, that is Chuck Huebner reporting. Now, the story is not over yet. Chuck continues his investigation on News 10 at 6.
Thanks, David. Scientists working to stabilize the sinkhole on the edge of the Napoleonville Salt Dome really have their hands full. Although it appears that only one of about 60 separate salt caverns has collapsed, it still created an environmental nightmare that experts are still struggling to get a handle on.
One big problem is the aquifer that runs beneath the dome is now contaminated with natural gas. Gas and possibly even oil. Fortunately, the area's drinking water does not come from the aquifer. It comes from Bayou Lafourche. And as you'll see in this report, until scientists can find a way to safely remove the natural gas coming out of the sinkhole, nobody will be able to return to their homes.
Here's part two of the history of the Assumption Parish sinkhole.
When you talk with the various officials who are charged with trying to contain and stabilize the Grand Bayou sinkhole, a common phrase soon becomes apparent.
The experts have really never seen anything like this before. This is really just new science. That's what's taken so long.
This is the marshy area surrounding the edge of the sinkhole. If you look closely enough through the trees, you can make out some of the booms and skimming equipment that's been brought onto the site.
Biggest issue I see right now is we need to get some 3D seismic done. This cavern, the collapse of this cavern, about 3.3 million cubic feet of material has gone into this cavern. The sinkhole itself only accounts for about 550,000 of that material. So there's approximately 2.5 million, 2.7 million of material that has entered this cavern that's unaccounted for. Okay, so there may be pockets and voids, and that may be one reason why this sinkhole kind of continues to grow to a certain extent as things are settling down.
Thus far, some 960 barrels of hydrocarbon fluid and about 4,000 barrels of hydrocarbon oil have been produced from an exploratory well that's been drilled at the site. The problem that remains is how to get rid of the natural gas that scientists believe is still down there.
What's been a little frustrating is that we haven't had any success with venting the gas from the water aquifer. 4 vent wells have been installed, put in place. They basically drove some casing down to about 200 feet, have perforated that casing, but have not had any success in getting the gas to enter into the casing so that we can do a controlled vent.
Dennis Landry is one of those whose house is located inside the evacuation zone, next to Bayou Lafourche.
Now, so far, it's not coming up on land anywhere, and I'm told the land here is so hard and compacted and good soil, you know, it's not coming through the soil. But it does come up in the bayous, and that bubbling has remained the same.
You see those tiny bubbles forming on the surface of the water? That's actually natural gas that's associated with the sinkhole that's about 3,600 feet away from this particular residence. And that's the primary concern here.
Worst case scenario, I guess, is if this gas in the water aquifer comes to the surface, gets under some type of building or structure, and hits ignition. You know, to me, that's worst case scenario. That's why we have this area evacuated. Because, you know, the gas is only about 100, 150 feet down. You know, if it finds a source, finds an old oil well, an old water well, it'll basically come up to the surface. If that surface is, if that's inside of a shed or something off the ground and it's captured and there's an ignition source, you know, boom, we have an explosion.
For now, as the experts continue to work, officials like Homeland Security Director John Boudreaux say,
We deal with it as day by day and continue on pushing forward to try to get resolution and mitigation to this incident.
Now, coming up tonight at 10 o'clock, we'll wrap up our series of reports on the Assumption Parish sinkhole by talking to some of the foremost experts who are internationally known for their work in the field of geology. And they're located right here at UL Lafayette. That's tonight at 10 in the history of the Assumption Parish sinkhole.
Alright guys, here's a couple of images. First of all, this corporate document shows much larger sinkhole boundary than previously disclosed. Here's the photos that they're showing here. And this is the contour map provided by Texas Brine on November 2nd, 2012. And if you look at the dates here, you're looking at October 30th, 2012. So a few days back, this is where they determined was the edge of the sinkhole. And it's not too far off from what we were talking about. You know, we said it came across the road into the tree line, just like they've got shown here. And then they show it basically coming on around right here, whereas we said it goes on back past about even with this. Okay, so what we said, what we were showing is it comes on around, and there's a side road right out here that you can't see in this picture. It goes down that side road, and then it comes on around through here, and comes on down through here, and we know that it goes down this way, down below, and all the way over to the halfway mark. And we also know that it comes from here, because you can see the stub on up and around like so, all the way over to that manufacturing plant, or you know, basically that manufacturing plant is just nowadays is just basically a holding facility for the different products, not really a manufacturing plant. But anyway, this is the map that they showed back on the 30th of October to give you an idea. And then map of the sinkhole with dimensions provided by the parish on October 14th. So this was quite a while back before everything grew, and you can see where they're showing it back at this point. It was 550 feet from there to there, 550 feet from there to there. But it's quite clear that there's water back in here, all the way up in here, and you come around the little dock. Well, it's really just a ramp, but come around it, you can see all the water back in here, and you can see the darkness and the water down in here. You know, clearly where all these dead trees are is unquestionable that that's all part of the new Louisiana sinkhole. The November 1st, 2012 flyover indicates the sinkhole is considerably larger than shown in either of the above photos, which is what we were just discussing. So this is the newer photo here that we were looking at the other day. So guys, as you've seen and as you've heard, even from the mayor, or maybe it wasn't the mayor, I forgot who that was, but anyway, you know, clearly, as I've told you, it doesn't matter what these geologists are telling you, or Homeland Security is telling you, or any of these people are telling you. This is brand new science. Nobody has a clue what is going on in Louisiana. Nobody knows the end result. And as he stated, you know, if these gases continue to come up and they find a way up, and they get trapped, like underneath of a building, or perhaps like underneath of this slab, or something of that nature, and that gas that is trapped finds an ignition source, you're talking about an explosion. As long as it's just venting into the air, you're really not going to get quote unquote an explosion. Okay, you'll get, I mean, like you'll get fires that'll burn, like you see at the top of like burn stacks at manufacturing plants. You see the flame of fire where they're burning out the natural gas. That's basically what you would have where the gas is venting out of the ground. You would have a continual fire, but not an explosion. And but if that natural gas, you know, that gas or methane or butane or whatever it is, as it comes up out of the ground, if it gets trapped underneath something and builds up in volume and finds an ignition source while, you know, it's underneath of something or trapped in something, at that point you would have an explosion. Okay, so, you know, like I said quite a while back when I first started covering the Bayou Corn Lake, or the Bayou Corn sinkhole, that I don't know what would happen. I mean, you've got wells that are literally 3 times the depth, or 3 times the size of the Empire State Building in depth, I mean under the ground. And the question is, could that actually explode? You know, probably not, because there's no oxygen available to it, but then again, who knows? Who knows? I don't know personally, but quite clearly, you know, as he stated, if the gas is coming up out of the ground and it gets trapped in something like a building or a shed or underneath of a slab or whatever, and there's ignition source, you would have a literal explosion. So keep all those things in mind if you live down there in the Louisiana area and you haven't got out there yet. Just keep those things in mind. And as you can see in the video, they are monitoring the air quality. I mean, you can see it. You can see the vehicle. Not that don't mean that they're telling people what the air quality is, but you know, this is what we know so far, guys. You know, just they very clearly made it. I mean, they made it extremely clear that nobody has a clue what's going on. They've got a lot of ideas, a lot of possibility, a lot of hypotheses, and a lot of theories. But at this point, nobody really knows what's going on with this Louisiana sinkhole. Nobody does. It's brand new. It's never been seen before. It's just a whole new thing that, you know, that's just, what do you do? What do you do when you've never experienced anything like this in history, as far as anybody knows? You know, how do you handle this? It continues to grow. It continues to expand. And as he said, you know, it dropped all of that material in there, but there's quite a lot of it. Quite a lot of it that's completely unaccounted for. Where's that coming from? You know, that tends to tell me that there's something going on under the ground beyond what even we know. You know, I was talking about all these trees falling into the hole. That's probably what's causing the bottom of the hole to rise up 30, 50 feet. And what he says is that the bottom of this hole, as far as what all was above the hole, all that stuff that's fallen in there, it only accounts for a part of it. And there's quite a large part that's unaccounted for. So where's all that coming from? Think about it, guys. Some things are going on underneath the ground that we don't even know about. I mean, us that are doing the research on through the internet. You know, I would love to be able to go down here to Louisiana here and investigate this. I mean, I really would. I think it'd be awesome to go down there to see this thing first of all, and then kind of, you know, really walk around and really get a concept of what it's like down there. How does the ground feel? You know, that kind of thing. You know, things that you just cannot pick up through the internet. But anyways, guys, that's the update for the Louisiana sinkhole. Quite clearly, it is still growing, and you know, they make that clear, and it is quite clear that nobody at this point truly understands what's going on. Even the guy from DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, you know, he said that the experts are telling him that you know, they've never seen anything like this before. They don't know what to do. So, you know, I don't know what to tell you guys. I just, like I said, if you live in the southern part of Louisiana, you know, you really need to be working on getting out of that area. You don't know what's going to happen. They don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen. And there's nobody that can claim that they know what's going to happen, because this is just a never seen before event. Okay, guys, I love you guys getting the word, stay in the word, and get the word in you. Shalom to all.